Today we're going to be discussing mental health in the workplace. This is my interviewee, and she will be answering the questions provided. Can you tell me how many hours you work a week?
I usually work 32 hours a week, split into 8-hour shifts each, and they are 4 days a week, usually Monday through Thursday.
All right. Do you usually work day shifts or night shifts?
I tend to usually work night shifts, although sometimes I do work day shifts as needed. It really just depends on the demand for that day and that week. But on the usual, I tend to work night shifts.
All right. Which shifts are more stressful, and can you explain why?
Night shifts are a lot more stressful than day shifts. Just because night shifts are a lot more procedure based and there's a lot to do at the end of the night. Um, instead of day shifts, you're just bridging that gap between the openers coming in and the closers. And it just takes a lot longer to like finish closing than during the daytime. Um, During the day, you're usually just taking calls, and you're helping out on the floor, whether you are front of house or a back of house shift lead. It just depends where you're needed. But when you are closing, you have to make sure everything is done on a timely manner. You have to make sure that, um, everything is done to be ready for the next day. And if we can't finish, we have to make sure we finish before we leave. And it just takes a lot longer to do those night shifts, because there's just so much more to finish.
All right. Do you often work overtime, and how often?
I would say I do usually work overtime. I usually work a total of like 2 hours every week. That's pretty much split into 30-minute shifts. So every shift I usually work about 30 minutes and I work 4 days a week. So about 2 hours total. And that is usually because of the fact that I am closing and we are not scheduled late enough in order to finish everything on time. So therefore that has us pretty much doing a lot of overtime so we can actually finish those things because we have to walk with our managers, whether that is front of house or back of house, making sure that everything is recovered, our doors are locked, our registers are locked, all of our money is being dropped in our safe. Um, and then for back of house, making sure that all the floor is stocked accurately, filling any holes that there might be, and really just, making sure everything is like in tip-top shape, ready for that next morning. Because working at Disneyland, they always want to make sure everything is like pretty much perfect coming into the next morning. So our job as closers and to ensure it is near perfect as it can be, for the guests that come in first thing in the morning.
How predictable is your weekly work schedule?
My work schedule is pretty predictable. I am considered a weekdays CR, so a weekdays part-time shift lead. And those weekdays are going to be from Monday through Thursday. So I usually have Friday, Saturday, and Sundays off, unless there is a holiday period, in which holiday periods are outlined in our contract as the week containing Thanksgiving, the week of Christmas, and the week before Christmas. Also, the week of New Year's and the week after New Year's. And then also any like specific like holidays, like Veterans Day, Martin Luther King Jr. Day, those kind of stuff. We're usually required to be considered fully available during those days or those weeks. And in which those days can be very unpredictable when I get my schedule, just because scheduling and management do have the freedom to schedule me pretty much whenever they want. And it can sometimes be really stressful waiting for my schedule to come out, because I never know what I'm going to get. But as long as it is not a holiday period, it is being very, very predictable. And I'm able to pretty much, know that I am getting Monday through Thursday shifts, unless it is a holiday period.
How do you feel about working on the holidays?
I don't really like working on the holidays, because it takes away from much needed time with family and friends. Um, I believe that Disneyland should not be open on Christmas Day, New Year's Eve, and Thanksgiving Day. It should be spent at home with family and friends also. And you should be able to, spend time with them, and not come into work because those holidays are meant to be with your family. And because we are open on those holidays, it can be really, really upsetting having to go into work and then coming off of work and everybody's asleep and I can't spend any more time with them. And, there goes my Christmas or there goes my Thanksgiving. And although like we really try to make up for that at work and try to do like our own potlucks or we try to, celebrate together as much as we can. It's never really the same as if you were spending it with family and friends because it's just, it's different. You're with your coworkers instead of your loved ones. Um, but it's definitely not my favorite thing, and I don't look forward to working on the holidays, which I often do.
Does this affect your relationships with your family?
It definitely does affect relationships with my family. I would say that, like my aunts and uncles, to where I usually go to Thanksgiving and Christmas events with, they sometimes get really, really upset when they can't see me on those holidays because oftentimes those holidays are one of the very few times I can see them that year. Towards the end of the year, especially when it's really, really busy. With the holidays, everyone's doing their own things. Everyone's trying to go out and go shopping for each other. And it's a very busy time at the end of every single year. And those holidays are supposed to be like meant to be spent with family. And when I can't see them, they get upset and I get upset. And although we can make it up by spending like other days with them, it's never truly the same as it being spent on specific holidays.
Do you feel the need to call off because of how many hours you're getting?
I currently feel like um, I don't need to call off based on the hours I'm getting. With the 32 hours a week, I'm pretty accurately able to balance like work and a personal life. With working Monday through Thursday, mostly everybody is already working their 9 to 5 jobs, Monday through Friday, so I kind of just fit straight into that. My family and friends tend to work closing shifts as well. And with me also working closing shifts, I'm able to spend like mornings and middays with them during the weekdays. And then during the weekends on Friday, Saturdays, and Sundays, I'm able to spend time with them and spend the whole day and be able to go to events because most events do tend to be on the weekends anyway, and things are open a lot longer on the weekends as well compared to the weekdays. So I believe that during the weekends, I'm able to, really enjoy my personal life and the things that I like to do for fun because I actually have time to do them 3 days out of the week. If I worked any more than that, like full-time hours, like 40 hours a week, I might not feel the same way just because a lot of people experience burnout when they work their full-time jobs and they tend to get really, really exhausted when on their days off and just all they want to do is lay at home and can really negatively affect their personal life because they can't really go out and do anything. Whereas I feel like I have a very good balance. I'm not overly working too much, so I can go home and still enjoy myself and still feel like I have the energy to go enjoy my life, which I feel very blessed about. But you know, right now at least, I'm very happy with my hours.
Thank you for sharing. Do your work hours affect your personal life, and are you able to balance them?
At this moment, I don't think my work hours affect my personal life. I'm able to balance them pretty well. Um, I'm able to enjoy all like the fun events on the weekends, and have a good time and spend time with family. Um, and I don't experience any sort of burnout at the moment. But I do know when I start working full time, probably sometime next year, um, I think it's going to be a lot harder to balance those full-time hours because work pretty much does consume your life when you're working full-time hours. And it can really be a lot, and it can be time consuming and very stressful, especially in my job where we are on our feet walking around for a full 8 hours. We're not sitting down at a desk, we're constantly moving, and it can really be tiring and a lot. So,
What would your ideal work schedule look like and why?
hmm. I would say my ideal work schedule would probably, if I was a full-time shift lead, would be from Sunday through Thursday, 8 hour shifts a week, 8 hour shifts, and then 40 hours a week, and then 5 days a week with 2 days off, with that being Fridays and Saturdays. I believe that would be the best way to balance like a work and personal life, because you can still have a personal life on Friday and Saturdays. Everything's open for pretty much the longest on those weekends. Although things are busy, you're, able to go out and do a lot more than you would during the weekdays. Where the weekdays are, already usually planned to go to work and school. So I feel like I'd be falling into that same crowd by going to work and school during the weekdays, but still being able to have Friday, where, although there is some people working in the mornings on Fridays, um, it kind of like gives me time to hang out and go out on Fridays where sometimes it's a little bit less busier, and not until the evening. So it's just, I think it'd be easy to maintain a very like nice work and personal life balance with those type of hours.
Do long shifts affect your job performance and why?
I would say long shifts usually do affect my personal life, because I'm on my feet for a full 8 hours, walking around constantly, responding to different guest situations, um, also responding to just different calls, for back of house that could be making split decisions on what to replace items with, and if we're running out of things, what to do moving forward. Um, and then for front of house wise, just getting called to pretty much anything and everything with guests. The shift leads are the first people that our cast members call. Even in a medical emergency, oftentimes they resort to calling us first, even though they are trained to call nurses and 911 if needed. But they're often not comfortable enough to make those decisions on their own, so they rely on us to come out and do them. And it can be very like stressful because you never know what you're going to get yourself into on a given day. Um, Having a full 8 hour shift, there's a lot going on. You never know what's going to happen. Um, and we don't really know situations until we get there. And we have to respond as quickly and as best as we can.
Thank you for sharing. The next section that are going to be discussing is mental health. Before you started working at Disneyland, how good would you say your mental health was, and how good is it now?
I would say before working at Disneyland, my mental health was pretty good. It was probably on a scale of 1 to 10, about a 9 out of 10. So very good, pretty high. Um, I There wasn't a lot I was very like upset about, and I had a really I have a really, really good life, and I feel blessed to have that. The only thing that was really missing for me was just having a good stable job, with enough work hours to, you know, give me enough money to be able to survive in this economy because a lot everything's really expensive now. Since working at Disney, I would say on a scale of 1 to 10, it'd be about like an 8 out of 10. So still really, really high. I'm very happy I have a good, stable job that gives me a pretty good pay. But my mental health maybe declined a little bit, just because of the amount of stressful situations we are put in. As mentioned before, with like responding to medical emergencies or responding to random guest situations. Um, I never know what I'm really getting into until I get there, and it can be really stressful. It can be a lot. Um, I can be dealing with a guest who has had pretty much the worst day, or I can have a guest who's having the best day, and they just want some help. And it's always my job to make sure that like I can do the best that I can for them. And sometimes they don't understand that, sometimes they do. Um, and it can really affect my mental health when they are being really rude and upset towards me.
In what ways does your job affect your mental health?
Let's see. My job affects my mental health with responding to just crazy situations. Um, the most stressful like situations would probably be any sort of medical emergencies. I have to make the call on whether or not to call 911 and call between calling 911 and calling any nurses. And I never really truly know like what the right decision might be because obviously I'm not medically trained. I'm just there to be a shift lead for merchandise. So I don't really know too much about the medical things and what to do. And they will be training us in the future, which I do appreciate. But at least right now, it's really stressful trying to figure out like what to do and how to approach situations. And I just have to use my best judgment to make specific calls because, you never truly know like what's going on with people. And you sometimes have to ask the people around them like if it's a normal thing. And, it's just a lot. It's very stressful dealing with medical emergencies.
In what situations do you feel the most stressed out and why?
I feel the most stressed out, probably responding to front of house calls. As a shift lead, I have a walkie and an earpiece, and when I'm called to a situation, um, I often don't get really any information about what's going on. I will be told to respond to an area, usually just for cast assistance. And that can really range from anything. It can be from trying to deal with something like with a guest, like a return or exchange. It could be as simple as that. Or it could be as complicated as trying to help a guest who lost something on an attraction and that's something we can't retrieve, and just trying to figure out the best course of action to do with those sort of situations. Um, but I think the anticipation of really not knowing what I'm getting myself into until I actually get there is really, really stressful, because I respond and it can be something horrible or it could be something super simple. And I never truly know until I get there. So it's really stressful kind of responding to those things.
Thank you for sharing. What do you do in order to maintain composure in a stressful situation?
In stressful situations, I tend to put myself in the guest's shoes. Um, I never truly know like what a guest has experienced that day. They could have just come to me trying to exchange or return something after having like the probably one of the worst meals. And sometimes I don't know that. And they can come to me very, very upset. And I might not like understand why they're so upset at me when I'm just trying to help them and make their situation better and make their day better. And when they come to me upset, I have to, keep my composure, and do the best that I can for them because Again, I don't know what they've gone through that day. I don't know if it's been a good day or a bad day. So I just kind of like think about them, um, and put the guest first before myself. Although sometimes I can be really frustrated at a guest for not listening to me. Um, Ultimately, I don't really know everything that they're going on, either even sometimes at home or just during their day. So I just, take a second, breathe, and put myself in their shoes and treat them how I would want to be treated.
Good advice. Share an experience that you had where you felt a decline in your mental health.
Ooh, an experience that I had where I had to decline my mental health would probably be an experience that I had within the last couple weeks. I responded to a front of house situation with a guest where they had bought an item that still had a sensor on it. And in order for us to take off the sensor, we need to see proof of purchase, so a receipt. If they don't have a receipt, then like a bank statement, something like that, just to prove to us that they have purchased the item because we don't want to assume they stole the item. And they came to my customers and they would not take the sensor off because she didn't have any sort of proof of purchase and was not willing to prove it. And so they called me, the shift lead, who I happened to be with a manager already. So I was very lucky in that situation. But they flagged me over because I was just walking the floor. And upon arrival, the guest was already really, really upset. She was yelling at my customers and she was recording them, which is pretty horrible. I just got there and I have no context of the situation, and she's already recording me and yelling at me. Um, it seemed very unfair and kind of made me really upset and frustrated because I don't know why she was coming at me when I was just there to try to help. But we tried to, the manager and we tried to talk to her about where she bought it from, trying to get more information. And whenever we tried to ask her those questions, she just got very defensive and was like, I don't know why you need to know that. It doesn't matter. Why don't you just take the sensor off? And then she was recording and she was like, I've been recording for 3 minutes and something seconds and it's wasting me thousands of dollars, and was just off the wall. She was crazy. And didn't want to listen to us and for us to try to help her. Ultimately in the end of that situation, we ended up taking off the sensor, because in those type of situations, she would have just gotten more upset if we didn't do anything to help her. But we did send out like a merch alert, which kind of alerts other areas that we suspect somebody stealing because ultimately she never gave us proof of purchase. So we alerted other areas about that. But after the situation, my manager and I were equally both pretty upset about it because we were just there trying to help her and she just kept yelling at us and, wouldn't understand like why we needed the information we needed. And I kind of felt like a decline in my mental health, especially that day for the rest of my shift, just because she was so rude to us and so not understanding of what we were trying to do.
Sorry that happened.
Okay.
Is it hard to maintain a happy persona at work, and can you explain why?
Sometimes it really can be hard to maintain a happy persona. Um, on a usual day, I would say it's pretty easy to be happy at work. I have a very good coworkers and good people around me, and we always do a really good job of lifting each other up and making sure that we feel supported whenever we need it. Managers usually do a pretty good job of supporting us as well. Although there is moments where being happy can, be really hard, because we could be experiencing something that happened with a guest or a cast member maybe telling us something that's very personal that's going on at home, which might upset us. But overall, like maintaining a very happy persona is pretty easy, and I feel lucky to be able to say that. But there are definitely times where being like happy around everybody and trying to make sure that the people around me are happy because our cast members are usually influenced by the moods of their shift leads, because we're there to lead them and help them. And if we're not in a good mood, they're not usually going to be in a good mood. So I always try to do my best to be happy for them. And usually when I am, they're usually happy and supportive back to me. So,
How have guests affected your mental health?
ooh, guests have definitely affected my mental health by being very rude and understanding. As discussed in the situation before, guests can sometimes be very, very rude and not understanding of what we're trying to do to help them, and can be, really mad, um, and just give us problems, even though we're trying to help them and, do the best that we can for them. I often have guests when we run out of merchandise. Social media has very heavily impacted our store, because things will get very popular on there and things will sell out. And then we'll have tons and tons of guests come in asking for the same item after we've already sold out of it. And once I tell them that we're sold out of it and there's nothing I can do for them because the whole park is sold out of it, so there's nowhere else I could really direct them to, and they're just simply like out of luck for that day, they tend to get really, really upset at me and will sometimes give me attitude about it, even though it's something that's completely out of my control. Those type of guests can really like negatively impact my mental health, because, they're I'm just trying to help them. I'm trying to give them the best information that I can give them and try to direct them to, better outcomes or that kind of stuff. And yeah, it's a lot sometimes.
All right. The next section we will be discussing is workplace culture. How would you describe the current environment of your workplace?
I would say the current environment of my workplace is pretty good. Um, I believe it's pretty like easygoing and enjoyable, because the managers really trust us as shift leads to make sure that everything's getting done. Um, if there's any ever feedback for us, then they're happy to give it. But they do it in a very like constructive way, so it's really positive. They do a really good job of lifting us up. And with that trust that they have in us, um, it really makes like my work environment really easygoing and happy. But although there is still a strict side of things, because being a closer, we do have to make sure everything is done on time and accurately, and making sure everything is all set up and as good as we can make it for the next day. There is sometimes that strict aspect of things, but overall, like having an easygoing attitude and knowing that we'll be able to do everything in as best of a timely manner as we can, is pretty good.
Has a boss or manager ever affected your workplace environment, and can you explain?
Um, I would say bosses and managers have definitely has definitely affected my work experience and environment, because let's see, they usually are pretty positive and will make the work environment like pretty positive. But there are definitely times where they negatively affect our environment, because of sometimes they get sometimes they get very snappy at us, in moments where like they might be stressed out about something that they're working on, and then something's not going right for them, um, and you know it could it could really negatively impact us. So overall, the managers are very good at like making sure we're working in a very positive and as happy environment as we can. But there definitely are times where they will sometimes make situations like a little bit upsetting or kind of negative when they snap at us to do certain things or snap at us about like questions that they have because they don't understand the decisions that we make sometimes. But overall, they trust us and they try to be as positive as they can with us.
What kind of leadership styles do you see in your workplace, and which style do you prefer?
Ooh, the leadership styles that I see are Um, I see the people who are strict rule followers. So some shift leads will not stray away from the specific rules, like no matter what, and are very much based on like, um, you know, following what the rule book says, and not taking like returns, exchanges, or specific situations, um, like as leniently because they are so focused on the roles. Then I also see some shift leads who are super, super like laid back, and very much into the guest experience and trying to make sure all of our guests are taken care of, even if it does break a couple rules. For example, us as merchandise, we have a lot of people coming back to us looking to replace lost items. They'll usually have a receipt, but never the item, and they want us to replace it. Unfortunately, due to our specific rules, we're not allowed to replace those items. We have to send them to Lost and Found, and hopefully, Lost and Found will then have their item and be able to give it back to them. But replacing those items isn't something that we can do, unfortunately. So we do have those leads who very specifically follow that rule and will never replace things. But then we also have our leads who are super easygoing and will do those things. Um, and will do those things and replace items, but usually only in specific situations. Um, but then there's also the shift leads who fall right in the middle. I would say I usually fall into the middle as well, where you do still follow rules, but you do have to recognize that there are situations where we need to prioritize guest experience, and sometimes we do need to replace that item in order to have the guest have a good, happy day. And if it's, breaking the rules once, which they do promote, having a good guest experience, and sometimes that does go against our rules. But overall, if Disneyland wants guests to come back, then sometimes we do have to do that for them. Sometimes to turn their day around and, make them happy. I would say the best leadership style would definitely be right in the middle. Um, you do have to follow your rules because, you know, that's what you're given, so you need to follow those. But also being able to recognize when to not follow those rules and prioritize the guest experience. You usually like partner with managers in those types of situations, just to make sure like, you're not making those decisions on a fly. Like they they usually like will have our backs and support us. And once that does get up to the higher ups and find out we made that sort of guest experience as a one-time exception to our rules, then they're usually happy to hear that because then we know that the guests will return back to Disneyland, and it's a whole snowball effect. If they leave happy from that experience, they're probably more likely to come back in the future.
All right. Has your current promotion affected your job experience?
I would say my current promotion has affected my job experience. I see a different side to cast members as a shift lead versus when I was just a regular HH cast member is what they're called. When you're given regular shifts and you don't have any sort of leadership status, your role is called HH. Um, I don't know what it stands for, but that's what it's called. Um, so when I was an HH cast member, I saw a very like relaxed and enjoyable side to cast members. I also sometimes saw them like kind of getting into like arguments with each other and calling each other out to managers sometimes, which was really upsetting to see. But ever since I became a shift lead, People have started hiding that side from me. For the most part, people do still stay friendly and enjoyable, which I'm very happy to see that because, we want to make sure customers are happy. But I don't really see cast members getting into arguments or calling each other out to managers anymore. They tend to hide that from the shift leads because they know like once we notice it and we see a pattern with things, we're gonna report that to the managers. So they, sometimes don't really show that side to us, and I definitely see like a different side of people. People also tend to be a little bit more professional around me, depending on the situation. Usually when I'm just checking in with them, they're pretty enjoyable and casual and happy. But when I do have to really be their leader and give them direction on what to do moving forward, I see a much more professional side to them that I didn't really see beforehand.
How are your relationships with your coworkers?
Think my relationships are pretty good with them. Although I don't see any of my coworkers really like outside of work on a personal basis. I keep most of my coworkers strictly either seeing them at work or at work events. Being a cast member, I'm lucky that we have cast like previews on things. So we get to see like parades early, we get to see shows early, and we get to, go to those fun events, which I will usually go with my coworkers too, because, we all work there together and might as well. Usually after a shift, sometimes events will happen and I'll go with them to those. But it never really like goes outside of just going to work at Disney and going to work events at Disney. It usually sticks to those type of things. Um, but I do know that there are some people who have those personal friendships. But I'm not really one of those people that have personal friendships with work coworkers. I try to keep it to work as much as possible.
Are you treated differently by coworkers depending on your role and why?
I am definitely treated differently by coworkers, depending on my role. A lot of people um, tend to look up to me ever since I became a shift lead, which I really, it really makes me happy and I admire that, they look up to me and they find me as a role model. Um, and so sometimes they treat me differently, like in terms of like guidance. I would say now that I've become a shift lead, they know that I do know more than regular HH cast members would. So they tend to come to me for any sort of guidance, and they respect me a little bit more, um, and it's just a very good thing to see because being a shift lead is a lot sometimes. And having those cast members like look up to me and being happy to see me when I come around because there's definitely situations where people are not happy to see certain shift leads. Um, but then there's the people who are happy to see other shift leads. So I would say I'm treated pretty well by my coworkers, but I might not be able to say the same for some of my other shift leads.
Are people comfortable enough to talk about their mental health and can you explain?
I would say people are pretty comfortable to talk about their mental health. Um, Disney, as a company, does a really good job of providing resources for people having to do with their mental health. Excuse me, whether that is emotionally, physically, financially, all that kind of stuff. Um, Disney like promotes um, making sure you're taking care of yourself first. Their motto for our cast health is be happy, stay healthy. So they really promote people, you know, being happy, making sure that you're staying healthy, making sure that you are supported if your financials are not very good. And overall, like we have a lot of resources, which most work environments might not have. But we have very like specific resources that we're able to reference for our cast members, which is very good to see. Um, so therefore, like people are pretty comfortable talking about their mental health just because Disney promotes being able to talk about it in a comfortable situation. They're usually directed straight to managers because managers are specifically trained on all of the resources that are given to provide to cast members. Because even when shift leads are not having, very good mental health, managers are trained to help us as well.
All right. Is your workplace inclusive and can you explain?
Ooh, my workplace is pretty inclusive. I am very lucky that like one of Disney's like main like keys is inclusion. So they really like to make sure that no matter like what gender, race, identity you describe yourself as, you are included and accepted at Disneyland. And pretty much everybody that I work with like accepts that. Luckily, we don't really have people who are not very accepting of that. And if we ever do encounter anybody that is, they're pretty much like immediately reported to like managers, and it's taken above them as well in order to make sure that everybody is being treated equally and fairly and happy. And that inclusion also goes for like our guests as well. Like, no, I have luckily in my experience, being 3 years there, I have not seen anybody be like rude or not accepting of guests or fellow cast members. Everybody's been very accepting no matter like really who you are. And it's really like refreshing to see that, especially in this like time socially. Um, we have a lot of people who, identify as like bisexual or gay or lesbian, and we have people of all sort of different races, all parts across the world, will come and visit us or sometimes move here and then work for Disney. So it's just, you know, I would say it's probably Disneyland's probably one of the most inclusive places you could probably work at.
Thank you for sharing. How safe do you feel giving feedback at work and can you explain?
I feel really safe and confident giving feedback to my customers, because a lot of people see me as a role model and come to me for guidance. So when I do need to give them feedback on letting them know what they might need to be doing better, or if they need advice on maybe how to move up and become a shift lead like me, giving them feedback on what they can do to do better to, get up to that level. They're often very upset. They're very accepting of what I have to say. And they listen to me and they really give me the time of day. I'm very lucky that most of my cast members are not very like ignorant of me. And if I have to say something, they will listen. But I would say that is also having to do with the fact that like I am there to support them and they know that. And I have shown that endlessly. And if, they aren't listening to like other shift leads, like it's usually like a problem with the person because pretty much that like everyone that I know, when I need to give them feedback or let them know something, they, won't hesitate to listen to me. And I'm, very happy to experience that. And I feel very safe doing it all the time.
All right. Are you given resources to help you combat mental health issues and can you explain?
We are given plenty of resources to help combat mental health. On our app, it's called Disney Cast Life. It is the same app where we like usually see our schedules. But we also have, different apps and things on there to help us with the different things, whether that's like payroll, scheduling, seeing your pay stubs, looking at events, but then also looking at life coaches. So Disney offers like personal life coaches that will help you do research to help you with your mental health. And they will research different things that you need, whether that's emotionally, financially, um, or even like physically with fitness and stuff like that. They will find resources for you if you provide them your insurance or if you don't have insurance. They'll provide what Disney has to offer for them to help combat like any negative things with their mental health or anything that they're feeling or any help that they need. And then Disney also offers pretty unique program where they offer like counseling services. You get an allotted number of counseling services per year. Um, and they're usually about you get I believe six sessions for every sort of like situation you're dealing with. So maybe you dealt with a loss in the beginning of the year. You'll have six sessions where a counselor will come help you with that, and you can meet with them online or in person. But then maybe you say later that year, you are just wanting to talk about, maybe you're having trouble financially and it's really upsetting you, and you want to talk to somebody about that. That's a different situation, and therefore you get another six sessions with that. There's no limit to like how many different like situations you can be in a year. It's just an allotted number of sessions per incident. So really that is quite a lot, and they're free of charge, and they're for the cast member and their immediate household. So it doesn't just extend to cast members, it extends to their family as well. I think it is a really, really good resource in order to help combat mental health and making sure that everybody is like as happy and as good as they can be pretty much. And then also financially, there is like loans that Disney can offer, whether like with or without insurance. And there's really like, if you do your research and really dive deep into finding a life coach for you and using those resources, there Disney has a lot to offer, and I only covered the surface of things.
All right. How have guests affected your workplace environment?
Guests have affected my workplace environment um, by like their attitudes. When they come in to our store, them being like really like upset or mad or sometimes messy, but also happy, can also like trickle down onto how my cast members feel. Because myself, shift leads and cast members in HH positions, we directly face guests pretty much for a full 8 hours all day. And the way that the guests are feeling and how they act tend to trickle on how we start to feel. If the trend for the day is that guests are really upset and messy in our store by leaving everything everywhere, it tends to make my cast members like upset and frustrated, um, because like sometimes like the guests don't like respect our store, and won't put things back where they found them. And if they come in with an upset attitude and they ask us questions, already in an upset tone or way, it can cause my cast members to be upset as well because they're just trying to help them. But then also when guests come in happy with a, good attitude and everybody's bright and happy, my cast members tend to also be happy back. So it's kind of like a feel of what you get is what you give. Um, and the guests like very directly affect us, whether like we want to let them or not. They overpower us. Like there's many more guests in a store than there are of us cast members working in the store. So they tend to like overpower, like if the majority of the crowd is feeling one way, our cast members are more likely to feel that way as well.
All right. The next section we're going to cover is social factors. Do you feel pressure to perform a certain way because of your job status? And can you explain?
I definitely feel a lot of pressure to perform really highly because of my role as a shift lead. I am expected to make very like just quick decisions on the spot. And sometimes it can be really like intimidating if I make the wrong decision, um, whether that's with guests or like with medical emergencies. I never know sometimes like if I really made the right decision. And I tend to sometimes go the rest of my day thinking back on decisions that I've made, and wondering if I really made the right one or not. And yeah, it can really be a lot, and it ranges every day.
In what ways has your personal life ever affected your work life? And can you give an example?
My personal life has definitely affected my work life. Um, Usually things going on at home you might not want to bring to work with you. But usually it does happen whether you let it or not. Because the way you're feeling in the morning at home, usually kind of leads to how you're feeling for the rest of the day, even if you end up going to work. Um, Unfortunately, the end of last year, a friend of mine passed, who's about my age, and I was really, really upset about the situation. And I wasn't focused on work because all I could think about was that. Um, and I just wanted to cry and not make those decisions and go to work and you know be happy because I felt like I couldn't. Um, so you know your personal life really does affect your work life, because ultimately you never know what like people are going through, and your personal life can really, really affect you, whether you want it to or not. And work is no different. Like you bring those things to work, and yeah, sometimes you can't avoid it.
Sorry to hear that, but I appreciate you sharing that experience. In what ways have you felt the most pressure?
I have felt the most pressure when our area managers come in and like shadow the shift leads. When they're present, I have a lot of pressure to make sure I make the right decision every time. So sometimes that causes me to, take a little bit longer to make decisions, just because I want to make sure like what I'm doing is as like good and right as it can be in my area manager's eyes. Because ultimately, when it comes down to, getting rid of people and people getting laid off and people getting fired for, various incidents, um, I feel a lot of pressure because they have a power and they have a say in what happens in those kind of situations. And I never want to be on their bad side. I always want to be on their good side, and I always want to be the best cast member that I could be in their eyes as a shift lead, because I never want that to happen to me. And because of that persona of them, and you know how it makes me feel, it really puts a lot of pressure on me to do the right thing.
What changes in the workplace could improve your mental health and those around you?
I would say that um, to better like help with mental health and with myself and all of those that I work with, I believe if there was more specific, uh, resources outlined on a daily in our check-ins. Check-ins are given at the beginning of everybody's shift. That is given by our RC, who, gives in those check-ins and also like make sure all everybody's assignments are being done and all of our breaks are going out. But they give a check-in in the beginning of everybody's shifts, pretty much letting them know all the information for the day and what they need to know moving forward for the week, and what might be upcoming, and all that kind of stuff. And I believe if we included very like specific resources in those check-ins, and giving very specific people that they can visit if they ever need help with those specific situations, I think would be very beneficial to everybody's mental health, because then they can directly use those resources that are given to them, instead of just having to find everything on their own. Um, just, given them like this is who you talk to and this is what they'll help you with. It's a lot easier for them to like approach them, because then they already know like what they're there for and what they want to visit them for, and they know that the person that they're speaking to can directly help them. And giving that information in a check-in, I think would be very beneficial.
How do work relationships affect your work environment?
Work relationships definitely directly affect my work environment, because there are quite a bit of people who have very close friendships or sometimes relationships out of work. And obviously, that creates cliques and people like, being like overly friendly with each other sometimes. And sometimes when that happens between like shift leads and cast members, it can be uh, not very good for the work environments, because shift leads sometimes, when they have like those friends outside of work, um, that are now like they're now their leaders at work, they tend to give them like less um, like stressful or not as hard tasks to do, and then they'll give people that they don't know like more difficult tasks. And I think that can create like a very negative work environment when they tend to play favorites and, use favoritism because they're friends outside of work. But luckily, like that usually stops right at shift lead, because anybody who is a manager or above, they cannot have any like personal friendships or relationships outside of work with their shift leads or cast members. Managers can only be friends with managers because they're at the same level. And therefore that, helps combat the favoritism, and the creation of like cliques. Um, to, make sure that the work environment is as professional as it can be, because I know that there are definitely workplaces out there who, managers might have really close relationships with uh, their people that they work with, that they are the leader of, or they, outweigh them on the ladder. Um, and it can become very unprofessional very quickly. And a lot of things can happen when you let those like relationships like affect you personally, and then bringing it into work.
All right. Does your age affect how you are treated by those around you? And can you explain?
I would say that my age sometimes does make the people, oh, excuse me, make the people around me um, tend to treat me a little bit differently, because of the fact that I am a lot younger than a lot of my customers are. I'm only 22 years old, and we do have a good chunk of cast members who are a lot older than me, who have a lot more like life experience than I do, whether that is with or without the company. And sometimes that makes them treat me a little bit differently, thinking that they can guide me or tell me what to do, even though I am their shift lead, um, because they believe they have more knowledge than I do. And a lot of the times I've noticed that isn't really like the case. Sometimes they'll try to guide me, and I actually know more about the situation than they do, or whatever, you know, type of thing that they're trying to let me know or talk to me about. And sometimes it can be really unfair. Luckily, I do have quite a bit of cast members who respect that I am their shift lead, no matter our age difference. Um, I have quite a bit of people who are, you know, 3 or 4 times my age, And they'll still, hear me out and listen to me and know I'm there to support them and know I'm not, trying to overpower them or tell them like I know more than you know because I'm a shift lead. But they're more so like understanding of me and accepting of like decisions I make, and they tend to listen to me. But sometimes, yeah, my age will sometimes affect how people treat me. It just, really depends on the person.
Right. Does your gender affect how you are treated by those around you? And can you explain?
Luckily enough, my role in merchandise at Disneyland is pretty like woman dominated. So, for most of my life when I was younger and probably what my parents experienced was a very like male dominated economy. And the fact that my area is pretty woman dominated, really, it really makes me happy. And it also tends to like not make people treat us very differently just because there are so many of us women. But there is quite a bit of males as well. So I would say uh, a lot of the women and the males in my area, we tend to work together very well, and nobody really treats each other very differently because uh, us as women have really like proved ourselves in that role at Disneyland, and we've kind of like overtaken merchandise, and you know, because I don't know, we really made our way up there, and it's really good to see. And luckily, nobody ever disrespects that.
All right. Well, that concludes our questions. Thank you for answering them.
Thank you.